It's the bank holiday weekend, and that means one thing: music. Whether you're slumming it at Reading Festival or tripping around one of the many smaller events, the sounds of the summer are here. So I've dedicated this month's quintet of quality games to those themed around music or musicians. It's quite an eclectic bunch, so let's begin with a tribute to one of rock and roll's greatest icons.
Hello there, my friend. I am Lickbutt. The Stones always enjoying the blood to party with. Here we are. I guess we can start the real party now.
Not long ago we said goodbye to the music legend that was Charlie Watts, and so in tribute I thought I'd take a look at the Rolling Stones CD-ROM experience based around their 1994 album Voodoo Lounge. We've seen this kind of multimedia before. David Bowie gave us Jump, Peter Gabriel gave us Eve, and Prince gave us Prince Interactive. But more so than the others, the personality of Mick Jagger and co are all over this one.
Give me the best you got.
Same for me.
There you go.
Swear.
It's a wonderful life, Ronnie Wood.
Put that on your cursor.
Released the year after their 1994 album of the same name, Voodoo Lounge features 3 of their singles: Love Is Strong, I Go Wild, and Sparks Will Fly. These aren't exactly the band's most well-remembered songs, which didn't even chart in the US, but they are still fun and energetic rock anthems.
Is anyone in there a cigarette smoker? Nobody here smokes cigarettes. No one.
You begin at the entrance to the Voodoo Lounge, where a lust for life, love and liquor overcomes anyone who enter. Inside, digitised revelers dance and gyrate in every scene, where you can also find several band members hanging out with the clientele. Get to the bar and you'll receive a pass to the VIP area, but here you can also click on a cocktail to listen to the singles the game is trying to promote, alongside an interactive psychedelic videography suite. Beyond this little bit of interactivity, you can remix songs, discover band influences, and witness some impromptu jams, but the real meat of the package is in the many videos and audio clips. Members reminisce of the band's beginnings, while also musing on why they have stayed together for so long. You get behind-the-scenes footage of live gigs, and the making of the album shot by Mick Jagger and Ron Wood, and each member gets a mural that praises their contribution to music history.
I've never taken this life seriously anyway. I'm very grateful to it. It's a great ego thing, but you couldn't believe it.
Other than gaining that VIP pass, there isn't really any game to be had, which is a shame considering the hyper-stylised Voodoo Lounge itself, which often drifts into the fantastical. Its presence is merely an excuse for musical skits and diverting animations that don't hold the same novelty as it did in 1995. Nevertheless, it is a must-play for Rolling Stones fans and music fans in general.
So cute when he plays.
Operation exploitation underway. Proceed to objectives. Close X. Roger. Copy that. New Order 12. Countering resistance.
Wake up! The revolution has begun!
Aerosmith got their own stab at being digitised, though Midway's Revolution X is no edutainment title. It's an arcade light gun shooter set in a post-apocalyptic future overrun by a prudish dominatrix called Headmistress Helga. The arcade cabinet was everywhere in the mid-90s, from bowling alleys, chip shops, and even your home thanks to a slew of mass-produced console ports. And I've played them all just to compare. The arcade game is an undoubted classic, even if it was originally conceived to be a Jurassic Park license before Sega secured those rights. It's an insanely chaotic coin chomper, with some bizarre locations, huge explosions, and scores of scantily clad women. Aerosmith are on tour in this fun-hating future, and are soon kidnapped by Helga's new ordination.
Hands off, man! Hey! What the? Hey, back off!
Stop this nonsense now, if you don't want to deal with me.
You are the last fan standing, and thankfully you have a gun with unlimited ammo ready to travel the world and destroy all the plans this evil empire is concocting.
Don't give up!
Along the way you can pick up many power-ups, including a screen-clearing detonation, health shakes, and better weapons, but the ones that are most plentiful are CDs and laser discs. These meteor of music do much more damage than any bullet, and are key to downing armoured vehicles and choppers.
Looks like you made it. Where you go from here is up to you.
After the first stage, you can choose where to go next. The Amazon, where you can see some of the Jurassic Park origins, the Middle East, or the Pacific Rim. There's a New Order base that needs destroying in each of them, and they all contain horrors brought upon the sexy bikini-wearing populace. After that, you're off to Wembley Stadium for a final battle against Headmistress Helga, which contains some insane prizes I won't dare spoil. The levels do seamlessly transition from area to area, thanks to some nifty sprite scaling techniques, and the result is a blast from beginning to end, even if you are playing with a mouse instead of a gun. Compare that to the ports, and these home versions leave a lot to be desired. They were so poorly received that a sequel, this time featuring Public Enemy, was completely scrapped. Out of all of them, the DOS port is perhaps the best, allowing you to use the mouse, but the game cannot produce the same amount of chaos found in the arcades, and often feels a little buggy. The 16-bit releases fare the worst. Neither the SNES or Mega Drive are compatible with any mouse or gun peripheral, despite both systems having suitable chunks of plastic available for some time. They're joyless, joypad-only experiences, with graphics that cannot possibly do the original justice. The Super Nintendo does make use of the hardware's Mode 7 capabilities, and it is somewhat interesting to see how they translated it in this way, but that's about it. The Mega Drive is static and barren by comparison, even if it does have more sound bites than its rival cartridge. Being released in the home in 1996, this title was a good candidate for the emerging 32-bit consoles, with both Sony and Sega's machine earning a port. Both are more faithful, but with no gun or mouse support, it's still a slug to play. The PlayStation suffers from fairly long mid-level loading, which isn't as bad on the Saturn, but the latter is missing some animations and tends to hold on some sequences a little too long too. Still, all the home conversions offer unlimited continues, reducing the difficulty and frustration somewhat. With this style of mayhem, constantly losing lives is going to be inevitable, so at least it has that. The only version of Revolution X you should really play is the arcade original. I do think each port offers up some interesting thoughts about how games were translated for drastically different hardware in the 90s, but I cannot recommend them when the MAME flawlessly renders all of the crazy that could ever come from the minds of Aerosmith. Virtuoso is kind of like Inception in video game form. Not for its complex plot, interesting characters, or, worryingly for a third-person shooter, banging action scenes, but what this is a rather trippy game within a game. You play as the greatest musical talent of all time, who has been trapped inside his hotel room thanks to hordes of adoring fans blocking every exit. All he has to occupy himself is a virtual reality machine called Virtuoso, and it is this game that both you and the leather-clad self-proclaimed rock god will be playing. In all honesty, this is just a lame excuse to have a digitised metaler fight spiders on Mars, robots in an underwater sea base, or snowman in the grounds of a haunted mansion. And in 1994 it was lambasted for it. Reviews were unkind, particularly for the 3DO original, with many calling it the worst Doom variant around. Playing the DOS version now, I can understand the ire, but I can't exactly agree with it. The graphics are a bit funky, with an absurdly short draw distance, doubly obscured by the novel third-person viewpoint. The unnamed protagonist is also slow-moving, and all of this combined causes many a cheap hit. Despite this, the plentiful pickups and generous health bar do counteract much of the unnecessary damage, making it more forgiving than it might otherwise be. The simple gameplay loop encourages exploration, which allows you to uncover the rare neat tricks in its level design. The developers at Movie Time did take on some of the engine's limitations within its design. Our generic frontman may mostly block your view of the long and narrow corridors that populate the map, but he can also hug the walls, giving you a much better view. Doing this will also see an enemy's slow-moving bullets slide past you if you time it right. You can shimmy left and right, and if enemies gang up on you, there's a limited number of screen clearing specials to get them all in one. Each of the 24 levels, 8 in each stage, play roughly the same. You find the key, then you find the exit. Along the way you can collect useful items such as a map and radar, which you'll no doubt use regularly thanks to some surprisingly sprawling later levels. The radar, displayed on the top right of the HUD when found, shows the position of all nearby enemies so you can plan your attack. Some go down in one hit, others take several, but the worst are flying creatures like bats or birds. Thankfully, a destroyed enemy stays destroyed, at least until you lose a life, but those not hit will respawn at the same point if you find you need to do some backtracking. Some enemies are more than just bullet fodder. When you finally enter the halls of the haunted mansion, seemingly unkillable suits of armour will slowly trundle after you like Boo in a Mario level, gaining in number as you explore. Robots in the underwater research station of the Marine campaign will ignore you, only damaging you if you get in their way. But they will also keep open slamming doors, allowing you to follow them through without taking damage. These are interesting concepts not even Doom thought to do. But that's the game Virtuoso will always be unfairly compared to, Doom. While not nearly as good, I still had a blast blasting away some virtual demons virtually through a virtual emulation of DOS. Inception indeed. In a bid to stand out from the Beavers, Bandicoots and Bobcats of this world, Arc Developments tried something different for their own mascot platformer. After what must have been an epic brainstorming session, they came up with a guitar-toting, music-loving Elvis impersonator named Johnny Bazookatone, who's on a mission to save his prized guitar from the depths of hell. Aiming to release in 1995 to coincide with the launch window of the cool new CD-based consoles, as well as DOS naturally, it didn't quite make it, instead coming out in early 1996. Nevertheless, Johnny's design is very much of its time. He sports shades, carries an oversized guitar, and has hair quiffed to a pre-rendered purple blob. Despite the vibes it gives off, the game itself is sadly underwhelming. It's a stupidly hard game right from the very first level, and it just gets more arduous from then on. It's not even the fair kind of difficulty, with blind jumps, dastardly placed enemies, and precious little health forcing you to memorise pixel-perfect run-throughs if you want to get anywhere. None of the game's mechanics, which are still darn interesting, are explained in-game, leaving you stumped as to what to do on far too many occasions for my liking. Johnny has his basic jump, run, spin attack, and also a guitar that doubles as a machine gun, but this magical musical instrument can also suck, or shoot a blasting power chord. Sucking is not explained at all, and is in fact used to pick up and use items such as keys. Strumming a power chord gives up a blast of damaging energy, but it's slow to wind up, making it close to pointless in most situations. On top of this, Johnny can hover, but with 4 to 5 button presses needed to perform, it's cumbersome, particularly on a keyboard. Mastering this ability accurately and consistently is a must if you want to even get past the second level. The camera view is also more of a hindrance. The path ahead is restricted, as Johnny tends to hug the last third of the screen, which means you cannot easily see what's coming up. Running will mean heading straight into danger, hoping no cheap hits will deplete your precious health by the time you get to the end of the stage. Couple that with some stages where the path ahead is so obtuse, you just sit there scratching your head, and it becomes easy to see why this game isn't better remembered. Not even the otherwise interesting levels and inviting pre-rendered graphics could save it.
This college sucks. It doesn't even have any chicks.
To cap out the month, we revisit MTV's resident knuckleheads, Beavis and Butt-Head. After being pleasantly surprised by the virtual stupidity, I was optimistic for Beavis and Butt-Head Do U, their next point-and-click adventure released in 1998. This time, the haplessly horny high schoolers go on a field trip to a nearby university. Naturally, they think tertiary education is all about scoring chicks. When they hear about a party happening after the event, they figure this would be the place to do just that.
Hey, baby.
Graphically, the game is a bit of a mixed bag. It may look crisper than the first game, with some nice 3D rendered cutscenes when you enter certain areas, but for the most part the locations look a little sparse and unpopulated. The screens are now wider than your monitor, which scroll whenever the cursor is placed near the edges, but the composition and staging looks weird on occasion. Even the animation suffers at times too, with stilted dialogue and often perfunctory sentences.
I really think you might enjoy yourselves if you tried just a little bit harder. Did you hear that, Butthead? Now I said harder.
With the exception of some well-executed puzzles, it's an overall lesser, dumber, and more offensive experience. Like I said in my Virtual Stupidity review, I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Beavis and Butt-Head, but I do enjoy the subtle satire that can be found in both that game and the movie that came out at around the same time. But remove that, and all you're left with is a couple of vulgar, over-the-top reprobates trying to be funny. It left a bad taste in my mouth, to be honest, and that is entirely down to the poor bass note writing. When it comes to the puzzle design though, it's actually very good. It's slightly more difficult than that other game, but still on the easy side. You have to collect check marks from each department before you're allowed to join the uni frat party, and each department head needs convincing before you can go.
Good job, boys. Here, give me your sheet and I'll go ahead and sign.
The noticeable difference in quality could be down to moving production from the now defunct gaming division of MTV's parent company, Viacom New Media, to the Illusions Gaming Company, who did a much better job with Duckman and Blazing Dragons. Regardless, I suggest you play Virtual Stupidity over this, unless you're really a fan of lurid, baseless humour.
What in tarnation is all that? My heavens! What in the world have you done?
We crashed. Yeah. Can you write on our paper now?
And that's it for this month. You can find out how to get these music-inspired games working on Windows 10 by heading on over to the Collection Chamber website. We've now succeeded in resurrecting over 500 old games there, so check them out. I've even tweaked a couple of existing titles too. There's the classic cinematic platformer Bermuda Syndrome and the futuristic racer Scorcher, each get an update. Follow the links in the description below to find out more. I also want to plug an app a good friend of mine is developing for players of Dungeons & Dragons. The Goblin's Notebook is a single-pane view of your tabletop RPG campaign notes for pre-session planning, in-session note-taking, and post-session recapping, all direct from a web browser. I've been using it as a DM in my recent campaign, and it's become an incredibly invaluable tool. Check out the Goblin's Notebook for free by visiting the link in the description below. But before you do that, please like, share, subscribe, and do all of that algorithm-satisfying YouTubery stuff. If you want, you can join my Patreon too. Link's also down there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time on the Collection Chamber.